You know, in the Arabic language, it's often the smallest words that pack the biggest punch. Today, we're going to see how these tiny particles, these things called awamil, can take a simple sentence and just completely flip its meaning and its grammar right on its head.
So how in the world does that actually work? I mean, really, how can one little word completely rewire an entire sentence? Well, it's not magic. It's actually a fascinating system of rules, and we're going to break it all down, piece by piece.
All right, before we can start changing things, we gotta know what we're starting with. So let's look at the basic Arabic noun sentence, the Jumla Ismiya, in its default, completely untouched form. This is our baseline.
Okay, so a Jumla Ismiya has two main parts, two pillars. First up, you've got the Mubtada. That's your subject. Then you have the Khabar, which is basically what you're saying about that subject. You can think of it as the thing and the news about the thing. Simple as that. Subject and predicate.
And here is the absolute golden rule for our starting point. When a sentence is just sitting there in its natural state, both the subject and the predicate are in what's called the nominative case, or rafa. So in our example, al-kitabu jadidun, the book is new, both of those parts are in this default rafa state. Now you got to remember this because everything is about to change.
Okay, baseline established. Now, let's throw a wrench in the works. We're going to introduce our first set of game-changing particles, ma and Laisa. Their whole job is to flip a statement from a yes into a no.
And these little words are just so cool because they do two things at once. First, and this is the obvious one, they change the meaning to not. But the really clever part is the grammatical shift. They don't touch the subject at all. Instead, they go right for the predicate, the khabar, and they knock it out of its default rafa case into a brand new one, the accusative case, which we call nasb.
And you can see the effect perfectly right here. The subject, al-kitabu, is left completely alone. But look at the predicate. Jadidun becomes jadidan. It's just a tiny change in the ending, but it signals a massive grammatical event. And it was all triggered by that one little particle, ma.
Now, Arabic loves having options, so of course there's another way to do this. Instead of changing the predicate to the nasb case, you can slip in another particle, be, right before it. This actually pushes the predicate into a third case, the genitive, or jar. The meaning is exactly the same, not, but grammarians will tell you it adds a little extra emphasis, a little more punch to the negation.
And you can see this exact, really elegant structure in the Quran. First, Laisa kicks off the whole negation. Then, the particle be is brought in to work on the predicate, kafin, putting it into that genitive case. It's a really sophisticated way to build a sentence, packing in multiple layers of grammar and meaning.
Okay, so we know how to say no, but what if we want to shout yes? What if you want to take a simple statement and just inject it with absolute, undeniable certainty? Well, for that, Arabic has the particle inna. And this is where it gets really, really neat. Inna works in the complete opposite way to those negation particles. Remember how ma went after the predicate? Well, inna ignores the predicate completely and goes straight for the subject. It forces the mubtada into that same accusative, nasb case we saw before, but it leaves the khabar all alone. It's a perfect grammatical mirror image.
You know, this is such a big deal grammatically that the parts of the sentence actually get new names. The subject isn't just a mubtada anymore. It's now called ism inna, the noun of inna, and the predicate becomes khabar inna. That's how you know this particle isn't just visiting the sentence, it is taking over.
And once again, the Quran gives us a fantastic, powerful example. Inna is used here to make an emphatic, undeniable statement. Indeed, the hypocrites are liars. The grammar itself backs up that certainty. You can see it right in the subject, al-munafiqina, which has been put into the accusative case. It's the language equivalent of underlining a word twice.
Okay, so we've got particles that mess with the predicate, and we've got particles that mess with the subject. But what if a particle just doesn't mess with anything? What if it just comes in, changes the meaning, and leaves the grammar completely alone?
Well, this is exactly where the question particles hal and ag come in. Their only job is to turn a statement into a question. They are grammatically neutral. They don't change a single thing about the sentence's internal structure.
You can think of these question particles as polite guests. They come into the sentence, change its function from a statement to a question, but they don't rearrange any of the furniture. The mubtada stays rafa, the khabar stays rafa. The core structure is left in its pure default state. Pretty cool, huh?
All right, we've seen negation, we've seen emphasis, and we've seen questions. Let's pull all of these threads together and just look at the whole system at a glance. Think of this as your cheat sheet for these incredibly powerful particles.
The key thing to take away from this is just how precise and logical this whole system is. It's not random at all. The negation particles only go after the predicate. The emphasis particle only goes after the subject. And the question particles, they leave everything alone. Each one has a very specific job, and it leaves its own unique grammatical footprint.
So, we've seen how these awamil are the masters of the noun sentence, which, of course, leaves us with one big final question. If these are the rules for sentences built around nouns, what kind of powerful particles are out there, just waiting to transform sentences that are built around verbs? Well, that's a puzzle for another time.